Sayadaw said that in everyone's being, in everyone's nama rupa existence, the truly present phenomena of physicality and mentality, rupa and nama, are the truth of suffering, dukkha sacca. He's said this repeatedly. And he's also mentioned its cause. The cause for suffering to arise is taking pleasure and grasping. Samudaya sacca. These are hard to see with one's own knowledge. And because that is to say, it's not easy to see these with one's own knowledge, and therefore these dhammas are profound. So something that is hard to see, it can't be seen with our ordinary mind. Of course, it can't be seen with a kusala mind. These dhammas, the true Dhamma, can only be seen with a clear, clean, pure kusala mind. And an arahant sees these dhammas with kiriya, functional mind. And this kusala mind, in order to see the Dhamma which is profound, we need to fill that mind with energy, like we're increasing power on a pair of glasses. So to see something that's very small, that we can't see with our eyes, then we use glasses with sufficient power, and then we can see the small fine object. And sometimes we go further and use a microscope so that we can see with 10 times or 20 times or even 50 times more power than the ordinary eye. So this is a big increase in our ability to see. These very subtle, deep and profound dhammas need increasingly great power if we're going to see them. The Buddha said, Kaye kayanupasi viharati. In the field of observation, the group of physicality, one repeatedly observes the arising physicality, giving it the name, giving it the label of kaya, labeling it as it is, seeing it as it is. And we cannot see kaya as kaya with our ordinary mind. We need to add power to our mind if we want to see very fine detail. So what are the powers that we need to add to our mind in order to see this Dhamma, which is difficult to see, and its cause? We need to add atapa. The Buddha said atapi. So atapa is this intense energy which dries up the kilesas. And we also need to have the jhanic factor of aiming. When we have this intensive effort, ardent effort, and aiming, then sati appears where it wasn't previously. So it appears out of nothing. And as we note frequently, if it becomes more and more frequent, if the sati becomes, if we develop many, many moments of sati, then it becomes powerful. And as sati becomes powerful, then the power of samadhi arises and grows. We need aim so the mind and object can be aligned in focus, and we need to make effort. Applying aim and effort, if the mind falls calmly and collectedly on the object, then knowledge will arise. So one must fill up one's mental energy. That is, one must generate very intense energy and full sati and samadhi. One must increase the power of our minds. And Sayadaw will discuss this topic for another time tonight in terms of both theory and practice. To be able to go from seeing very coarse, true physical nature to seeing very fine, true physical nature, our effort must be present. Our effort must be strong. So we need to apply effort to get to the main object of the rising and the falling. And we must aim our mind every single second. Sometimes we miss and sometimes we slip. At those times we need to adjust our effort and our aim. We need to increase our effort, and we need to, like a teacher who corrects the student, we need to correct ourselves. And this quality of being able to correct ourselves is called yoniso manasikara, which is wise consideration. If we apply this, we can make the mind accurate. So if one practices a lot, sometimes one misses and one knows it. And sometimes one slips off the mark and one knows it. And also one knows when one has a direct hit. This is due to the factor of yoniso manasikara. It's what makes, the Buddha said that yoniso manasikara is what makes the path of our Vipassana practice straight. So we have to make aim, and we have to apply our effort every second together with the aiming. And when we miss or slip off, then we have to adjust. We need to correct ourselves. And as we do this gradually, our mental power increases and the object of observation comes closer and closer. For example, when we see something like a line of ants from afar, when we see it from far away, it might look like a string on the ground or might look like a stick. It doesn't look like a line of ants. But as we come closer, we still see it as a line, but it's moving. And so we start to see the quality of movement, which is actually made up of many, many individual movements. And it's like that when we observe the rising and the falling at the start. When we observe the rising, it's just one big rising movement. And the falling is just one big falling movement. This, the way it appears is concept paṇḍitā, this perceiving the rising movement, perceiving the falling movement. This is perceiving the concept of akara, or manner. So we put our attention on the base of the place where the rising and falling arises, where it's based, is the abdomen. So, and that abdomen has form, and sometimes that's what we see, the form, shape of the abdomen. That's also another type of concept, or paṇḍitā. Whereas the act of rising is the manner. So form and manner, these two mixed together are what we see at the start. So if we're going to see how things really are, we have to go beyond these concepts. So when we're observing the line of ants from far away again, we see the line, then we see the line moving. And this line moving is a concept that covers over the true nature of what's really happening. So movement as we come to see it closer, we see that there are individual ants moving. And when we see this, then there's no more concept left in what we see. We're seeing the individual ants, concept, so to speak. We're seeing that it's not a line, it's not a stick, it's not a moving line. It's individual ants that are each moving individually. So this is what we see when we get up close. And it's true this way, it's like this with the rising and the falling. There are many, many risings in a single rising, many, many fallings. And in order to observe this as it is, we need to apply effort, and we need to apply aim, and we need to use our mindfulness. And if we miss the object, if our aim or effort aren't right, we need to adjust. And as we do this time and again, slowly our mental energy grows, our effort grows, our mindfulness grows, and Khanika Samadhi also grows. So every noting we make, our mindfulness and our samadhi grow, and one comes nearer and nearer to the object, and one comes to see there's some movements, there's some stiffness, there's some tension. And there's still, mixed in with these true natures, there's still the concept of form and manner. But as we continue to practice, making effort, aiming and adjusting as necessary, we finally come to see that there's just little moments of stiffness and little moments of tension or little moments of movement. Well, the form of the abdomen and the manner of rising and falling are gone. And at that time, one's mental energy is full and one's vision is clear. So in the absence of concept, true nature is apparent. At first, concept is what is apparent. At first, concept is what is apparent. But to cause concept to disappear and true nature to arise, we need to apply effort always. We need to aim, and we need to adjust as necessary. If we practice like this, every time the rising or the falling arises, we label it, we apply effort, and we aim to catch the object. Then effort is there. And starting with laziness, the mental defilements are not able to arise because of the effort. And the mind is clean. Due to the aiming, the mind doesn't go anywhere else. So there's no thought of wanting to see good things, hear good things, taste good things, smell good things. There's no kama vitaka, no thought of sense pleasures. And there's no vyabhada vitaka. There's no desire to harm others. And there's no vihimsa vitaka. There's no planning to hurt others. So there's no wrong objectives in our mind. There's just pure objectives. So this means our mind is very clean. And this is the immediate benefit that we get from the practice, purity of mind. Sometimes when we're out of balance, we have to adjust. And as we continue to do this, adjusting as necessary, the mind becomes cleaner. And sati sticks more and more to the object. So we might have 1 minute of mindfulness sticking to the object, or 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. This sati, mindfulness, protects the mind from mental defilements. It blocks them, it keeps them out. Without sati, the kilesas would have a chance to enter our mind streams. But with the protection of sati, there's no kilesas, Therefore, no disturbances due to greed, hatred, and so on. Therefore, it's quiet, still. And this stillness is samadhi. This is a clean mind. And when the mind is full of energy, there's the power of effort to reach the object. And there's the power of aiming to be accurate in noting the object. And there's the power of mindfulness, sticking to the object. And then, because there's no movement due to greed or hatred, samadhi develops, and one comes to see. Samadhi develops in every single second that we can note effectively. So from 1 second of noting, one increases, having more and more moments of mindfulness, full power of mental energy. So these powers, mental powers, become amazingly strong. And this mind is clean, free of blame. And one has to try to collect as many moments of mentality like this as possible. As we observe the rising and falling with effort, aiming, and mindfulness, to the extent our mental powers are strong, the mind will be clear and stable. So the stronger our mental powers are, the more the mind will be clear and stable. And if our mental powers are great, then in the rising, sometimes we'll see stiffness. Sometimes we'll see tension. These are really there, and we'll see them as they are. In the falling, sometimes we'll see movement or relaxation. These are really there. This is seeing the falling as it is. One sees what is really there. One sees the ultimate reality of physicality. These are occurring in the rising and the falling, and they arise due to causes. But at first, even though they are there, when we first start to practice, we can't see them because they're being covered over by form and manner. So we didn't see the true nature to begin with. But as we practice developing mental power, these concepts naturally disappear. And earlier in our practice, when the mind wandered, we didn't know. But as our effort and aiming and so on became greater, then when the mind wandered, we knew it and we noted it. So this is knowing what is really there. As we continue, this is to say that our knowledge grows as we continue to apply the practice. And as we sit, observing the rising and the falling in our body, heat may arise or ache or pains, and our mind goes there and notes the object. Or an itch may arise, we note itching. This is knowing what is really there. So our knowledge increases. And we sit, and with our eyes closed, sometimes a sound arises. So we are able to note the sound, and at first we weren't able to do this. We weren't able to see the various objects that arise, and now these various Dhammas begin to appear as we practice. This is knowledge. Before our mental powers were developed, we couldn't see this. So as we practice, we start to see stiffness. In the rising, we start to see stiffness, tension, movement. These are physicality. And we see that the physicality occurs together with the mind the mind and the body occur in a pair. So the mind is nama. So we come to discern nama and rupa. Slowly our knowledge increases. Why does it increase? It increases because the mind is becoming increasingly clean and stable. It's similar to when we see something in the distance and we want to see it better. So we approach it. So for us, we use effort to reach the object, and we aim to make the mind in focus every second of the time. And as needed, we adjust. When things are out of balance, we adjust. This is how we go closer to the object in the practice. The object becomes more and more clear. So as we increase the power of our physical eye by using glasses or a microscope, so too we develop our minds with the practice so that they can become so that the mind can become powerful and we can see. In our body, the physicality and mentality which arise do so due to causes. And when we say that they arise due to causes, each cause gives rise to its own effect. Sometimes there's no in-breath, and therefore the rising doesn't appear. Sometimes there's no out-breath, and therefore the falling doesn't appear. The rising is dependent on the in-breath. The in-breath is the cause of the rising. And the falling is dependent on the out-breath. The out-breath is the cause for the falling to arise. Sometimes the falling is submerged. It's hidden. So we don't note it. That's because the noting mind which notes the falling depends on the falling. If the falling is not there, the noting mind will also not arise. And sometimes the falling disappears. So we don't know the physicality of the falling. Only if the object is there does the knowing mind arise. And if the object is not there, the knowing mind will not arise. If it's there, the noting mind will arise. So in this way one comes to see how results happen due to causes, and causes give rise to results. In this way, as we continue to note whatever arises with effort and aiming, and with full mindfulness, every time that mindfulness is full, there's samadhi. Because there's no movement due to greed or hatred. Because of this, we start to develop knowledge. We discern physicality and mentality. And we see how they're related due to cause and effect. And as we note the rising and the falling, a thought arises, so we note it. And before that thought goes away, another thought arises, so we note it. But before that one goes away, another one rises, and we note it. So at this point, we see the start and the middle of the object, but we don't see the end of it. So this is an example of how, due to the cause, due to the object being present, the mind arises to note the object. Due to the object, the mind arises. Another example is sometimes we have an itch. An itch arises in one part of our body, and we note itching. And before that itch goes away, in another part of the body, another itch arises, so we note it. And before that one goes away, another one arises in another part of the body, and so we note it. So every time a new object arises, the mind to note it also arises. And this is an example of how, due to the object of observation, the mind which observes the object arises. If we know this, it's because our mental powers are full. So if we are always making effort to observe the object, then our minds are free of the kilesas, beginning with laziness. And due to aiming that we apply every second, the mind doesn't go to the three kinds of wrong thought, micca-vitakka. And because sati is arising continuously, it prevents mental dirt from getting into the mind. The mind is secure, and the mind is clear because it's not being defiled. In this way, our mental power is increasing stage by stage, like applying glasses with increasing power in order to see something. If we don't apply mental powers, how will we be able to see? But when the mind is clear and stable, then one comes to know, and this is called Sampajano. One knows correctly, completely, and for oneself. For oneself, and not due to someone else telling us, not because the teacher told us. One knows correctly, completely, and for oneself. This is something that cannot be denied. And the Buddha also said that one comes to know distinctly and in a special way. One comes to discern rupa, physicality, and nama, mentality. One comes to discern cause and effect. These things aren't mixed up. One sees distinctly, and one sees in a special way. The way one sees with this true knowledge is different from sutta jnana, different from the knowledge gained from books or learning, and different from the knowledge gained from reflection, chintamaya jnana. This is true knowledge. This knowledge knows rupa, physicality, as rupa, physicality. Nama, mentality, as nama, mentality. Cause as cause, effect as effect. The mind is clear. So the Buddha mentioned, he used the word loka. This word loka means conditioned phenomena. And here it means our physicality. So in this loka of our existence, of our being, because one sees clearly, there's no abheja. Abheja, which is arises together with greed. And there's no domanassa, which arises together with anger. Every second of the practice, the kilesas are dying down. So this is why the Buddha declared that this path of satipatthana is the one and only path for beings to purify their mind. And this path is none other than kayanupassana satipatthana, vedananupassana satipatthana. Chittanupassana satipatthana and Dhammanupassana satipatthana, observing the body as body, observing Vedana, feeling as feeling, observing the mind as mind, observing the various Dhammas as Dhammas. The Buddha was very clear about his declaration. The arising of knowledge is due to the power of ardent effort and sustained sati, and also due to the power of khanika samadhi, which comes because there's no movement due to greed or hatred and so on. This knowledge is not just theoretical knowledge that we learn from somebody else. It's not knowledge that we gain through reflecting on. It's knowledge that we really possess. We discern rupa and nama, physicality and mentality, and cause and effect. And as we do so, as if we are able to do this, then even though something likable arises, greed doesn't arise. And even though something detestable arises, anger doesn't arise. Every time we note with effort, mindfulness and samadhi, we are free of these. Sometimes the object and purity go hand in hand in pairs. One is free as one notes of the roots of kilesas. And sometimes a yogi or so might report they miss to note for 1 or 2 minutes. But even so, no kilesas arise. This is due to the momentum of their mental power. This is called vikambana pahana. This is because the kilesas are far away from that yogi's mind. The yogi is free, even though they miss noting for 1 or 2 minutes. And the earlier type of dispelling of kilesas, tadanga pahana, is momentarily dispelling. This vikambana pahana, dispelling them by making them far away, by cutting them off, is more powerful. An example is that say we have a piece of iron in the fire and it becomes red hot and we take it out of the fire, but it's still red hot and there's no way we would touch it because it's still hot. It's out of the fire. The fire is no longer making it hot, but it has intense heat because of the power of the fire that it was in. And every second when something like that, the piece of iron is in the fire, heat is being applied. And so too, in every second that we note, the kilesas are being burned up. This is called tadanga pahana, dispelling the kilesas on a momentary basis. And when we pulling the hot iron out of the fire, when it's still hot and no one would ever want to touch it, this is like when we miss the noting for 1 or 2 minutes, when our mental power is really powerful, then because of that momentum of our mind, mental powers, the kilesas don't arise, even though we temporarily don't have the mindfulness. So respectful and continuously noting yogis get this benefit. The mind is clear, clean, and knowledge is arising every second of the time. And at this stage, satipatthana, bhavana mind, has good energy, and this is true Vipassana. Just as what one can't see with one's ordinary eye, in order to see this, we use glasses or a microscope, and then what we want to see becomes clear, so too the conditioned phenomenon of rupa and nama, which are hard to see and therefore profound, become visible to us only if we work to develop mental powers. Only if we work to develop mental power can we see the Dhamma, the conditioned phenomena, which is hard to see and therefore profound. The yogis who are practicing will understand this, each in accordance to their own practice. And today the hour is up, so tomorrow Sayadaw will continue to explain this topic. That's all for today. So